Hello.
Hey,
How are you?
good.
Can
How
you
are
hear
you?
me?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I'm good.
So I can just kind of jump around then in terms of roles that you've had so far,
Sure.
and start in the beginning and just ask for anybody that doesn't know how you professionally got into voice acting.
Oh boy. Well, when I was young, and I mean like 9 or 10, I think I watched like one of my first Blu-rays and or not Blu-ray, DVDs. That was when like they started putting like special features on the discs and stuff like that. I'd never really seen anything like that before. And the DVD in question was Patch Adams. And there's a scene in that movie where an old woman, like it's her dying wish, she wants to swim in a pool of spaghetti. So Robin Williams got paid to swim in a pool of spaghetti with an old lady. And like for whatever reason, when I saw that behind the scenes shot, like they were giving each other a hug, and I was like, I could get paid to hug Robin Williams in a pool of spaghetti. Jobs are awesome. you know. So I tried getting into on camera for a while. But I was like a 6 foot 14-year old, and there's not a whole lot of work for 6 foot 14-year-olds. So I started voice acting, or rather, I started getting into anime at that time, probably around 16, 17 years old. And I was a big fan of Liam O'Brien. So I wrote him and I was like, how do I do this? And the man was kind enough to respond and be like, hello, child, pat, make a demo. So yeah, and then from there, I ended up booking. The first thing I booked was when I was visiting Dallas. I knew the director of the Fullmetal Alchemist movie, Mike McFarland, so he brought me in to do some like little bit parts, and then from there, I went back home and kind of snowballed it into whatever it is now.
And so would your first kind of more character part then be in Tweeny Witches?
Yes, actually, yeah, I think Ku was the first one where I was like, "Ooh, an emotional arc."
Yeah.
Yeah, she was so sweet. I really liked her. But damn, Tweeny Witches. I like that one because it was like, what if Tim Burton did anime?
Right. And would the first like major role be
Yeah, I always forget about because he was like the very first one that I booked, like right after. I mean, not right after. I think I booked Shambhala in like 2006, and then I booked right after, the year after that. It was right around Halloween. I was working at like a calendar kiosk in the mall, and I got a phone call, and they were like, "You booked a lead in this show," and I was like, "Ah!" But of course, that was back in the day when Jenny On had just kind of gone under, and
Yep.
we didn't know what was going to happen to a bunch of these licenses. So the studio just kind of, we didn't even know that we were getting underpaid, but we got really underpaid, and we just sort of did that and pushed it out, and we were like, "Oh, hope we make some money."
Mhm.
uh but yeah, those days are long gone.
And could you immediately find something to personally relate to, with?
Well, I've never turned into a ferret, but I did actually grow up with ferrets, so I was really excited to be like a little ferret for a bit. And it was exciting to be like part of a magical girl anime as like, my first sort of foray into character acting, because, growing up on stuff like Cardcaptor Sakura, you got to have some appreciation for that genre.
So what was the timeline of when you moved to LA?
Well, I was actually born in California, like a couple hours outside of Los Angeles, in the
Okay.
armpit of the desert. But I grew up. It's a place kind of, it's near Victorville. It's on the way to Vegas. But yeah, I basically, when I was a teenager, was dragging my parents down. We said down the hill, on the other side of the Los Angeles mountains. We'd drive down there all the time. I'd make them drive me 2 hours to auditions. Of course, I'd never book a single one because, you're 14, and if they can hire an adult who looks 14, they will.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, so I moved down Like I got my first apartment, I think I signed the lease on my 21st birthday.
Mhm.
So that was like 2007, 2008, somewhere around there. And that's when I actually got my first job out here at Universal Studios for Halloween Horror Nights. And then I blew my voice out and showed on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then I had to go into the studio on Monday and was like, "Hi, how's it going?" So thank God I was voicing a boy.
Mhm.
But yeah, so that's about. And then I've hopped in and out of here. Like when I was married, in the process of marrying my husband, I was probably in the country like literally half the time. So
Oh,
it's been kind of a back and forth. But yeah, I've been living in LA. Like I haven't moved from LA, I want to say, since probably 2012.
okay. And was your first boy voice for anime? Was it Satoshi or was it Kyosuke first?
Well, technically, because he was the boy, but then Kyosuke came after that. It's funny because when I was a kid, when I first started like wanting to get into voiceover, I really wanted to do boy voices, and I had a higher voice at the time. So I never thought I would do it. And then once I got into the industry, I realized that I do not sound as feminine as many of my colleagues. So I actually pretty much was exclusively boys for a good portion of my career, which is very funny to me. I never thought of myself as not feminine until I came to LA, and you
Mhm.
realize things are different.
Yeah. And do you have a particular process for boy voices, or does it just depend on the character?
Well, I literally was talking about this like right before I came on here, actually.
Oh.
I do have a bit of a process for boy voices. Like I have the default placement, but generally, like I have like the lower boy voice and then the higher boy voice, and that's dictated by the age usually. But the higher boy voice is probably like Recon range, and then the lower boy voice is, I guess, more like Enkidu these days. But yeah, I tend to like men and women have very different speaking placements. So I was telling a friend of mine, usually I'll pretend that you want to be a little drunk when you're a kid, because kids are basically like tiny drunk adults, but all the time. But male characters also tend to talk out like they don't have the same kind of sibilance. Like when you hear men kind of make fun of feminine speaking patterns, you always hear them talk like this and they hiss right behind the teeth. But like because women tend to speak right here in the mask, whereas men, I think, tend to speak more in their cheeks, so
Mhm.
you can hear maybe a little bit more of a slur from the S's. So that's always like my big tell for boy voices. I'm like, where's the sibilance?
I know with Kyosuke too, it might have been easier to relate to since you guys kind of both have a musical side.
Definitely, yeah. I definitely like clung on to Sosuke in that, or not Sosuke, Kyosuke, Kyosuke in that session. Because like you said, yeah, we both have a musical background, and I have a very strong background in voice myself. I learned, or I trained in opera singing for a while before I kind of gave that up because it was too expensive. I definitely feel like a part of me is just gone when when you lose your voice or whatever, you feel like a limb is missing.
Mhm.
And him not being able to play, I can't imagine feeling that crippled, like just completely broken like that.
Mhm.
And he's so young too. Like those sorts of things become your whole world. Like there's nothing else outside of that, because we have such structure in our lives at that time that those hobbies are really the only things that bring us joy. So to have that taken away from him and to just be stuck in a hospital, like being in the hospital by itself is such a miserable experience. But yeah, it really was heartbreaking. And although the funny thing is that, like, at the end of the show, there was that I think one of the last lines he says is like, Sayaka, like he's like saying her name, but he doesn't know why he's saying her name for reasons that we know, having watched the show. But the director had not given me the context of why he was saying her name. He was just sort of like parroting something that he felt like he remembered, but wasn't actually real. But to me, I was just like, oh, she's sitting out in the audience. Hey, Sayaka. Like, so that sort of context, like, it's interesting like how different emotional context can be if you're just missing like one piece of information, you know.
Hmm. And since it is on that same kind of topic, what is the darkest headspace you've had to go for a character so far?
Oh God. This actually, I was thinking about this this morning. It's not a character that I performed, but Akechi in Persona 5 was like a really kind of mindfucky experience for me to write because I adapted the scripts for the animation
Yeah.
a couple years ago, yeah. And I've my husband's a big fan of Persona. I've played, you know, several hours of 3 and 4 myself. But I haven't really gone through the majority of 5. So I was learning it as I was going through the show.
Hmm.
And I was the writer that was most familiar with Persona. So that'll tell you something. Like the other writers came in and were like, so what is this? I've never heard of this. Which was very shocking to me. But because you know, to me it's such a big deal. But yeah, like Akechi was a really interesting character, and I wasn't expecting the whole foster child plot line, let alone him sort of running into or them running into his shadow self, and then the shadow self having the conversation with his real self about the complex of being a foster child. And like I'm not a foster child myself, but my parents' only biological child. And but throughout the course of my childhood, they had foster children coming in and out of the house because my mother's always been very much a caretaker figure. She's a teacher now. She did daycare growing up, and she just really, I think, loved children and really wanted to help children.
Hmm.
Um, but you know, growing up with foster kids is a very unique experience because those children, sometimes you have them for a really long time. Like I had a sibling live with us for like over a decade, and then sometimes it's as little as a weekend. And sometimes you get really attached to those kids that are only there for a short amount of time, and you still have to give them up, and you have to find a way to rationalize like that sort of seeing them go, and then seeing your parents upset about it, and then being like, well, you're upset, did I do something wrong, am I lacking, you know. These sorts of weird thoughts are things that you kind of have, I feel like, when you're a child that's in this sort of situation where there are a lot of like family lines being blurred. And you know, I had a way more intimate understanding of Akechi's feelings when he was trying to rationalize like him not being wanted, or him being a tool of his, I think, his father, and
Hmm.
all this other stuff. Like it just, and at the time also I had freshly gotten diagnosed with some mental illnesses, and was coming to terms with some stuff from my childhood as well. So it all just sort of like hit at once. So yeah, there was a little bit of mental breakdown going on. But yeah, I'd say that's probably like the most intense experience I've had. Also, right around the same time, she's from Ingobernable, but she was said there was like a line where she kept going on like, no matter what we do, we can never escape the fate of becoming our parents. And I was like, no, God, I can't handle this right now.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, I would think that one of the first instances of dark emotional characters was playing young Kiritsugu in Fate Zero.
Definitely, yeah. I really liked that session. I still have very like visceral memories of that session because that was the first, like, I remember Tony Oliver, the director, came up to me beforehand and he kind of gave me a little pep talk. And he was like, okay, so we're changing things with this dub. We're gonna go like much more cinematic. And I think Fate Zero was probably one of the first union dubs for Fate. I'm not sure. But
Hmm.
I recall that I think the originals were non-union, and then they eventually switched over to union. I could be wrong. But yeah, so Tony Oliver was like, we're gonna go really cinematic, we're gonna be really subtle. So, you know, if it takes a lot of takes, then that's what it takes. And I was like, okay. But the session went really well. Like I just remember like kicking a lot of ass, and it was just really fun because a lot of that the performance was so physical because he was like running and hitting walls and trying to escape, and then just being completely fucking, what's the word, gutted, realizing that everything he knows is gone, when this was already like his father took him from place to place, if I recall,
Yeah.
frequently. So this was like, the first time he really started feeling like he had a place. Then also coming to terms with the fact that he wanted to be the one to kill his own father, that sort of stuff. That was pretty, yeah, actually, you're right. That was much more much more dark than I give it credit for, but I had so much fun. I don't think of it as dark. I'm like, I love killing my dad. Yeah.
And well, I mean, dark in terms of horror too. I would guess.
Yeah.
I would guess that Izanami is another huge one.
Yeah, Izanami was really interesting because he dies like right away. And
Mhm.
then but he was such a strong presence in that episode, or they, I guess. I don't know why I call him he, but I call everybody he. But yeah, like Izanami was really cool just because like being able to sort of do that narration, his
Mhm.
poetry, and trying to find a way of like making it sound like I knew what the hell I was saying. Which some people have said like the way that I read was very moving to them. So I guess I succeeded, which is very nice to hear. But I felt so lost in the moment. And working on that show was a very interesting experience as well, because it was my first show that I worked with Maki Terashima on. She's a producer over at Production IG. She did like Pirate Princess, and she's working on the new Junji Ito show, but she also is producing Be the Beginning. And she was very, very hands-on with the direction at that time, which was a big change for me, because usually I'm used to clients being much more like, okay, we'll let the director do their thing, and if we have notes, we have notes. But she was very much like, no, I want you to say it like this. I'm like, oh, okay. Maybe I like being bossed around by women. I don't know. But it's not always been like that, because I did work with her on like Fooly Cooley, and that was a completely different experience. And then Pirate Princess was such a blip for me. Can't really comment on say too much about that one, but
Mhm.
yeah.
And do you have a personal preference between darker roles or comedic roles?
Oh man. I mean, I have a real love of like the sadistic sort of characters.
Right.
Like Electo from Hades is easily like one of my favorite characters that I've voiced so far. I don't know. I just doing the audition, I was like, this is me completely unhinged. Hope I get it. And I did. So it's just nice to be able to be sadistic and talk about bleeding people dry and that sort of shit. I don't know. I like saying, I like sort of getting into the fuck it upness of power dynamics. I think that
Mhm.
sort of stuff is really interesting. But I also really loved Enkidu. Like,
Yeah.
and yeah, and that's, I think, more dramatic than, horror or comedy or anything else. But that was such a like, it was really such a big change for me. A really like an experience that I think I definitely won't forget, just because they were so layered. I've never had a character like, I have I think Athena and Electo are probably my most verbose characters. But even so, while they have, little variations in their personality, they are still very much an archetype. Whereas Enkidu was really a person. And I never had an opportunity to be a person. Especially in my career, I've always felt very much like outside of a box. And just because my voice is very is deeper than other people's and has a lot more texture than other women's, I always have felt very alienated in sessions with female characters, because, and I'm sure the whole gender identity crisis thing had something to do with this previously. But always wondering, like, does this sound female enough? Or, oh, the director's telling me to be a woman this way, am I doing it wrong? But with Enkidu, there was none of that. Like, it was literally just, here's the emotion. I understand that emotion. And boom, here we go. And in many ways, Enkidu sort of, there was an interesting parallel. I mean, I wasn't going through my own villainous arc at the time, but I came out as non-binary like right before Fate Zero Star, Fate, Fate Grand Order, Absolute Demonic Front, Babylonia, right before that one came out, because I don't know, I just wanted, it felt right to do it at the time. I had kind of been seesawing on it for a year at that time, and I was like, no, I think this feels right. You know, I came out of one of those sessions and I was just like, this feels fucking right. But you know, their whole arc during the show basically is coming to terms with the fact that, you know, they've been trying to live for other people's sake because they were born and felt as though they owed the person who brought them back. But in the end, they realize their own value, and that while they may be completely different, it just means that they are their own human race, I think is what they ended up saying, or something like that. And, you know, when you're trying to figure yourself out at the same time and finding a place between the gender binary, it was very refreshing to sort of have that nice little emotional parallel, all that pining, and of course the gay subtext.
Well, I guess you kind of answered it, but that was something I was going to ask was if there was a single moment playing him that was emotionally difficult to record and get into.
I'm trying to think. I really loved it all. I didn't have much difficulty, to be honest. I think like there's that scene where they're running through the forest and they're kind of like going through and realizing that everything that they thought they were working for their own benefit was actually just for someone else's benefit, where they're like, I've never had my own place. Not even mom likes me, you know. And I'm sure we've all been there. But, you know, just understanding how truly isolated Enkidu was, and, you know, feeling that not just the feeling hollow from emotionally from that realization of like, I can't even, this man that I know but I don't know is so close, and I just want to talk to him and I want to understand what the hell is going on, but I can't, I physically cannot, because of who I'm allied with, or because I have all these complicated feelings and can't parse out what I want to say. And, you know, and of course with the giant hole in the chest at the time, actually, yeah, I think that leading into like where they're just sort of sitting on the roof of the wall of the city and just looking out and being like, what am I doing here? Like that whole scene, and then Gilgamesh comes and is like, you're the chain of the heavens. Like, oh, it gets me every time. Sometimes I'll just watch it. Like I ripped that scene myself and I'm like, so beautiful.
And this is, of course, way less serious, but Amanda in Little Witch Academia.
Yeah, I love her. She was great. I just loved how she was very comfortable. I when I got the audition for her, it was from a place called Deluxe, and they didn't really have like a dubbing department at the time. Like it was a very what's the word? It was in its infancy. So my friend Laura Post was kind of working with the producer to try and figure out who to cast, because the first one was just the Kickstarter. You know, it was created from the Kickstarter, but it was a very strange experience because the producer didn't have much experience directing a dub. So we very much were directing ourselves. We were kind of like, and I'm really happy at how it came out, actually, you know, because I don't trust myself at all. But but yeah, and then once the show actually happened, then Laura and Lucian became co-directors, and we had like, you know, proper script adaptation and proper direction and everything, and the performances I think really improved. from there. But when I first got that audition, I couldn't tell if Amanda was a boy or a girl because they didn't give me a name. I was like, all right, well, I guess this works for me. But I just love how she's basically like a less foul-mouthed version of me. She's not that typical like girly girl, you know. She sits down and she's got her knees all spread out. She's like, yo, what's up? I love Amanda. And especially when she turned into the boy.
Yeah.
Oh. I got so excited in the session. I was like, hold on. I was trying to figure out like exactly the mechanics of how she became a boy. I wasted too much time on that.
And having talked to Mark Whitten too, it's cool to see you be your role in Seven Deadly Sins.
Right. Yeah. Well, that one always surprised me. Because like it's way more popular than I realized. But yeah, Gloxinia was one that I just kind of got auto cast for. They just kind of pulled me in. They were like, boy, that person. But he was fun because he's not like a typical villain, you know, like in the beginning it was just that lump of tentacles. And I just sort of make ominous statements every once in a while, and then he gets to be a little shitlord during the tournament arc where he's like, ooh, the death maze. So him and Droll. And then I did really enjoy the whole like arc where is his name Meliodas? Melodious, yeah. I think he's the one that becomes, or he gets put into Gloxinia's body and has to like traverse his path in order to understand or in order to make decisions or whatever. I thought that was really cool. We're able to hands-on be like, look, guys, there's always a different way. But in my head, I also was like, why didn't you check your sister's pulse, bruh? Like somebody bought my autograph and they were like, write a piece of advice from Gloxinia. And I was like, always check your sister's pulse. I don't know. No, I ended up like, I ended up being like, just have faith in the choices you make, or something, you know, referencing that whole fairy arc where he's like being like, you make my decisions or else you die. But anyway.
I'm sure it had to have been a dream to become involved with Pokemon.
Yeah, that was insane. I mean, Pokemon. Yeah. I think I said when I announced it, I was like, I obviously I grew up with Pokemon. I started watching it when they were in at the end of the Kanto arc when they were doing the what's it called, the tournament, the big one with Sparky and what's his face they remade. And anyway, but yeah, so I started watching at the end of that and kept watching for at least a couple more seasons. And I would just like, I lived in the middle of nowhere, so I'd be like, Ash Ketchum, come and take me away on your adventure. Oh, you go to the middle of nowhere all the time. But of course I live on a cul-de-sac, so who the fuck's gonna go to a cul-de-sac when they're on an adventure? It felt really good to book Opal just because, first of all, Galarian Weezing is amazing. He's my favorite Pokemon because of the smokestack hat. It's too much. And the poison beard, I can't. But she's a troll. Like, I love that basically she just walks through the forest and is like, I'm gonna mess with these kids. Like just a shit poster. I gotta love the elder shit poster. Yeah. But also, you know, like I feel so honored because I feel like Pokemon introduced us to like one of the best fucking trans voice actresses we've ever known, Maddie Blaustein, and it's just great to be part of that legacy. You know, I know Casey Mongelo is on the show and Casey is trans as well, but you know, we're forming a little coalition, Poke coalition.
And then how'd you become involved playing Fiora, Fire Emblem?
I've actually been on Cup of Tea's audition list for a very long time. I auditioned for pretty much every Tales game that came out over the last several years. I've played Fire Emblem Awakening and I have 3 houses. I intend to play it once I finish beating Great Ace Attorney, but I'm not like super familiar with the characters, so I wasn't aware of what I was reading for. But that one was really surprising to me because when I came in, they were like, "Yeah, you booked this," and she's kind of like this. She's like, "Ah, I'm Fiora, blah blah blah," and then they showed me the art, and I was like, "You want to go that low?"
Right.
And I do feel like my performance there has been a little bit of a topic of conversation because obviously some people might feel as though there might be a bit of a disconnect between this very nice slender young lady and this sort of booming rich womanly voice coming from her. But I guess there's been like some people being like, well, it's the artwork's fault, because if you think about the character, it's like she has survivor's guilt and all this other stuff going on, so to have like this sort of like grounded rich voice would probably make for a more interesting performance if we ever got to that, or if we ever dubbed that content, which I'm not sure where that content originates from. I mean, I know it's Fire Emblem, but which Fire Emblem? There's so many. So I really am like, knowing that, I am really interested to know like if Fiora is ever going to have like her own sort of arc or anything like that in future games, and if I am going to be brought back for that. I know Nintendo is like aware of me because apparently they reached out to the studio and were asking if I wanted to change my name in the credits. So my name might be updating in the credits. We'll see.
And I know one of the more recent anime series, cool role with Bridge and Cannon Busters.
Oh yes, yeah. That was a really fun one. I was so glad I got to work on that. I actually did time coding for it, and I worked as a production assistant because I was needing some extra hours at the time to keep busy. So I actually did like loop counts, and I wrote the subscripts for Netflix. I don't know if you've noticed, but the dub is a little more liberal than the sub, which is great. I love Amanda Miller's writing on that. She's fucking hilarious. But yeah, so I had to do quite a bit of editing of those subscripts before we sent them off to Netflix. But working on that show, the coolest part of it was getting to talk to I think LaShawn Thomas, I think is his name, the showrunner, because he's really fascinating. Like he worked on the Boondocks and several really prominent cartoons out here. And then he was really frustrated because he felt like, he's like me. He's not really an academic type. He's a doer. And I've dropped out of college like 3 times. And I don't think he has a college degree, but what he kept running into out here was, from what I remember of our conversation, kept running into situations where like you needed a degree, and like it was always kind of funneling people into the same sort of style. And he was feeling frustrated and sort of corralled into something that he wasn't really passionate about.
Mhm.
So he wanted to try making his own show. So this guy went out to Korea and just started working in Korea and making friends with as many animators as he could and getting to know as many people in that industry as he could. And then he just kickstarted X amount of dollars to make a pilot episode for Cannon Busters. And he already knew everyone he needed to know to make it and could hire them directly. And then from there, he was able to take that pilot and go directly to Japan to pitch it.
Mhm.
So, he's, I think, is one of the first American creators of anime. And the fact that he's like, a Black man on top of it was just so impressive to me. And like the way he was talking about, the issue of diversity in Hollywood was also very inspiring, because he's like, I'm tired of talking about this. I just want to make cool shows. I
Mhm.
don't I just want to make cool shows for little brown kids. That's all I want to do. And I was like, you fucking go, LaShawn. But yeah, I kind of got in trouble because we were talking too much. But he's a cool guy. I always love working on anime just because like I also work on quite a bit of live action as well. And live action is just it's not a nightmare. It's just there's a lot of things to keep track of because, as the discussion around the Squid Game dub kind of proved, a lot of people have a lot of opinions about live action dubs.
Mhm.
And it's not that we don't know that people have these opinions about live action dubs. It's more like, do we have the time to do we have the time and the money to sit down and worry about getting these lip flaps down to the little
Right.
plosives, you know? So whenever I work on anime after working on live action, it's just like the mouths are open or they're closed. That's it. Like,
Mhm.
thank Christ, I'm duh. It's amazing. But yeah, so that was after a live action show, and I was just so happy to like be working on an anime where, you know, everything was clean and easy to read. And I think my favorite episode to work on though was the one where it was the hot spring one, and of course it was the old perverted like author guy. But at the end of the episode, you know, there's that ghost
Yeah.
that has been forcing him to write, and the basically like, I'm sure you could, you know, confirm or deny this, but that whole speech that the ghost gives him, they're basically like confessing their love for each other. Like that's how I interpreted it. Cause he's like, it was always you. You're the only person who could have done this, fulfilled my life's goal. And I'm like, this is some intimate shit y'all are talking about. So I like to joke that that's like the first gay thing I've been paid to write.
Yeah. And for me too, it was cool to see you be a part of Yashahime.
That was a surprise. That was another one I just kind of auto booked. Like this sounds really asinine, but like I'm not I'm a niche, I think I'm more of a niche performer. So like a lot of the times with certain studios like Bang Zoom, I've been working with Bang Zoom for 15 years now. They know what I can do. So a
Mhm.
lot of times they don't even send me auditions. They either book me or like I think I get like 2 or 3 auditions for some little boys, or I audition for Odd Taxi, you know, every once in a while. But for the most part, they know. So they just call me in. Enkidu is an auto book. Gloxidio is an auto book. Pretty much anything from Bang Zoom is an auto book. So yeah, like just being called up out of nowhere and they're like, hey, you want to be in Yashahime? I was like, yes. Because Inuyasha, you know, that was like the birth of Adult Swim, I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was like right when I first really got into anime. I was 14, so like Yu-Gi-Oh was on, and then Inuyasha, and they had oh, what else did they have? Like Outlaw Star and that sort of
Right.
shit. Yeah, so I really loved Inuyasha. I don't think I ever actually finished it because, you know, it was going, it was going for a long time, but that was like the first anime that like, okay, I'm gonna go to the anime store and ooh, look at these super cheap box sets with shitty subtitles. How do they get away with selling this? You don't know what the black market is when you're 13.
Right.
So you know, that was the first one where like I'm like, these subtitles on these box sets suck. What's going on? But you know, we watched them anyway because we weren't anywhere near there in the dub yet. We were only on like season 1, and this is bad. Like when Koga comes in and is trying to
Mhm.
sweep Kagome off her feet, all that stuff.
Well, what were your thoughts on Jakotsumaru?
Jakotsumaru. I'm sad he got exploded. But yeah, it was pretty cool to just be like a little villain of the week. It was fun, and like I just saw a picture of him and I was like, of course.
Mhm.
The I feel like Bang Zoom is just like, let's make Marin all of the beautiful androgynous people. And then NYAV is like, let's make Marin all of the big beefy badass people.
And having talked to several other people who've worked, been directed by Mike or Nicholas, what is it like for you?
Mike is really fun because I'm pretty sure Mike has ADD, and you could kind of tell because whenever you talk to him, he goes a mile a minute.
No.
He's always like, I'm Michael Cinder Nicholas, and I'm having a conversation with you. Like he sorry, I just saw myself and I'm like, oh no, he does that. Anyway, but yeah, he's very like he's very much like he has a lot of thoughts going on. One of the first times I worked with him, I think it was after Fully Cooley. I ended up staying after a session with him and we talked for like 3 hours or something like that. And my phone was in the bottom of a bag, and usually I keep it on vibrate. So my husband's been like trying to call me, and other people, it turned into like this big thing. People were like, is Marin missing? I'm like, no, I'm just fucking talking to Mike. But yeah, he and I he and I have fun because we just make weird noises at each other and
Mhm.
we have fun. I really do enjoy working with Michael because I feel like, and Stephanie Shea as well, like Michael and Stephanie have both been very strong allies for me as a performer, a voice of wisdom for me, you know, when I'm having moments. And Michael is so creative, and whenever you're working with them, like I feel like it's a safe space for you to do pretty much anything. Like
Yeah.
I feel very nervous about, you know, I'm trans, and I'm not necessarily trans masc. I don't think I'm going to go all the way to masculine, but I do want to have a deeper voice, and I do want to potentially be in the running for more masculine roles, depending on the age range. And, but I don't get much opportunity to have practice unless I'm just doing it by myself.
Mhm.
So I don't get much opportunity for feedback unless I want to run this risk of appearing like I'm, you know, marketing myself as something that I'm not, when really I'm just maybe marketing a little too early. But with Stephanie and Michael, and so I'll be very cautious about what roles I want to read for at other studios that I am not as well established at. But with Michael and Stephanie, I feel very safe, like pretty much submitting for anything. Like the last couple of things they've submitted to, or they've sent me for auditions for, I auditioned for a couple of 20-something-year-old men. And, you know, they said like, and I was like, hey, you know, I don't know if you buy this,
Mhm.
but if you enjoy the voice print, here it is. Maybe they're trans, maybe they're not. I don't know. But you know, when you always feel very vulnerable when you're taking that kind of a risk, and Stephanie was like, it's never a waste of time to do this, you know, because even if I'm not listening to it for the purpose of this character, even if I can't make the creative choices that I want to, that would include you if you are the best person for the role, because ultimately the client gets the final say. I'm still listening and applying it to other characters or to other roles in the future. And she has sent me stuff for like other high profile projects that they've been working on. I very much value like NYAV and everyone that works there because they've been so great to me personally.
This isn't a question I normally answer, but or ask, but has there been very many bigger series like lead parts that you auditioned for and came close to getting, or if you can talk about that, or
I can probably talk about a couple. I know for a fact that I was like one of, if it wasn't going to be Carrie, it was going to be me for Maru and Gundam Seed, or Muryu. I forget
okay,
how we said it.
yeah,
But yeah, I was going to be Maru and Gundam Seed, and oh, I was so sore about that one. Not because Carrie didn't do a wonderful job, because she did, but because like Gundam Seed was the first show anime that I worked production on. I really just loved Maru. I thought she was such a fantastic character, really nuanced and layered female character, and the other one too, Nataro.
mhm.
Nataro, like both of those women were just so fantastic. Like we do not have female characters like that come around very often. So, you know, being that close to such a wonderful character, to booking such a great character, hurt a little bit. But, you know, like especially now I go back and I listen to that audition and I sounded a little too young, I think. Carrie definitely sounded more mature, and it makes sense. I've been joking for like the last decade. I'm going to be famous when I'm 40. I don't know how close I got, but I also read for Angela Bassett's character in the Bumblebee movie.
Oh, well, yeah,
And that one I was really proud of. Like that's there are a few auditions that I've saved over the years, and that's one of them, just so I could be like, I got to read for that.
mhm.
And oh, I definitely cried the day I didn't find out, or the day I found out I was not in Millennium Actress. I
Oh,
really wanted that one.
yeah,
I love Satoshi Kon so much, such a great filmmaker. Rest in peace, buddy. But yeah, those are the ones I can think off the top of my head. And Miraculous Ladybug, both my husband and I read for that one, and we
okay,
didn't book that.
yeah. Mentioning Satoshi Konak, back in July, I got to be the first person to do the like an actual in-depth interview with Bridget Hoffman, who was
Oh yeah, Perfect Blue.
yeah, she was Mima.
Yeah. Wow. I have not seen that one in a long time. I keep meaning to sit down and watch it. I just bought my friend the novel actually for Christmas.
Oh, okay,
Don't watch this, Kayla.
yeah. Was there anything upcoming that you can safely talk about that you're a part of?
Well, I just announced that I'm in the second episode of Ranking of Kings as Kage's mother. So, if you guys think that Sun One Joe was raised by a very upstanding person, I take full credit for it. Uh and I'm working on a show right now. I just wrapped on writing it, and I have like a little recurring character in it, but I'm not sure when that one's actually going to get released. I think it's a full series dump. There's another Funimation title that should be coming out real soon, like in the next couple of days.
Oh, okay.
But I have another little bit part there.
And my final question with interviews is always asking, what do you want your legacy to be?
Wow. Shit. Man. I mean, I definitely want my if anything, like I want to leave this industry better than the way I found it. And so far, I think I've been doing a pretty good job. Like I actually volunteer on a couple of dubbing committees, specifically for like trying to maintain pay rates and minimums. And we're actually trying to raise the minimum rates right now, in correlation with the new dubbing agreement that we just signed through SAG-AFTRA, which is a huge deal because for the last 20 years, we have been getting the same pay rate. 20 years. Imagine not getting a single raise in 20 years. Insanity. And, some people may say we're overpaid, but at the same time, like for me, I'm a recurring character. I'm in several episodes of a show that I just recorded this morning, but I booked 4 hours and that's it, and same with Ching and Pirate Princess. That was done in an hour. Opal was done in an hour. Like, because of the kind of voice that I am, and Enkidu as well, I think I got more hours from that project, but only because the episodes were being done in chunk, like not like one or two at a time, because it was a sort of simuldub situation as opposed to the full series dump. But Seven Deadly Sins as well, I'm pretty sure, I think I maybe 4 hours over the whole series, the first series.
Yeah.
Although I did get paid the full 2 hours just to do that one line for the most recent season. So sometimes it works out. But yeah, anyway, so what I'm saying is, like, it may seem like we get paid a lot, but also try making that money stretch when you only work 4 hours in a month, which is very common for me. Sometimes I don't work any hours in a month, and that has no bearing on me as a talent. It just has everything to do on what kind of auditions I have received over that period of time. And what sort of relationships I have with those clients, and whether or not they even like the sound of my voice. All that being said, I feel like dubbing as an industry has been very sort of closed off. Like a lot of people, I feel like if you're into it, and if you go to enough cons and you talk to enough actors, you kind of understand the business. But if you're a new kid trying to get into this, like, it's really hard to understand the ins and outs, and what is good etiquette, and how much are you supposed to get paid, and what's a polite way of phrasing a follow-up, so I really hope that when I move from this community, whether through death or other means, that people in general are just a little more educated. But I really want to try, and I just want to do everything. I want to start directing more. I really would love to start like producing stuff. My friends and I are joking about starting our own anime studio. But who knows? I'm very determined for dumb reasons, so it might happen. But yeah, I guess I want things to be better.
Okay. Well, thanks. I'm glad that we got to do this.
Yeah. Thank you so much for chatting with me. I wish you best of luck with your other interview.
Thanks. I'll be sure to send this to you once I have it up too.
All right, great. Looking forward to it.
Okay. Have a good night.
Have a good weekend.
Yeah, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.